I'm Terry, and this is Terry's Homestyle Cooking. We're going to do a couple of things today, including some vegetarian foods. So we're going to do a spinach patty. We're also going to have a spinach patty mixed with some black beans. It kind of holds it together really well, comes out a nice rounded flavor. We're going to do some kale chips, nice and crunchy chips baked in the oven. Yes, just straight kale with some sea salt, nice and simple. And then we're going to do pear bread, honey whole wheat pear bread. So it'll give you a nice little sweet dessert that's not too sweet, something you can even have in the morning with your coffee. So let's get started cooking. So now we're going to get started with the pear bread. We're going to get the loaf pans in the oven. We're going to pour just a little bit of oil in them just to get them started so that it's ready for you to pour the bread in, and it gets it kind of little, keeps it from sticking too much. This pear bread is super moist. The pears, I usually don't cut the skin or anything off of them. I just go ahead and put them all in there together, and it comes out so nice and juicy. So we have preheated the oven for 350 degrees so that we can get the pans ready for us to throw the pear bread in there. We're going to use some honey whole wheat. This is whole wheat flour. We're going to pour about 2 cups of flour in here. So once we do about 2 cups of flour, no, I don't use measuring cups, but I'll tell you about how much you're going to use of everything. You'll also get all the recipes, so you can actually follow those recipes a lot better than you can follow me, because I do things. Like I use, sometimes I use grated carrots. I use that because it's really good to give moisture to your bread, and it also just makes really good, it adds a little bit of flavor. So we're going to add some carrots to it. For this kind of thing, I like to do that. We're doing the pear bread, but raisins add a nice little flavor as well. So we're going to add some raisins in here. So no, this is not on your recipe, but this is just my little extra stuff. You can't have all of my secrets, just some of them. So we have some carrots, raisins, whole wheat flour. We're going to do a little bit of baking soda. I kind of use the combination of baking soda and baking powder, just to make sure that it has enough oomph in it to rise. Now we're going to do the wet ingredients. Now that's all you're going to need for this. This is all the dry ingredients, and then the carrots and the raisins are in there. We'll cut up the pears and put the pears in there as well. We're going to do the wet ingredients and blend them up a little bit before we add them in with the dry. So you're going to add in some milk. I use almond milk. I don't really use regular milk. I'm not a big milk fan, period, so I have to use something that gives me a little bit of flavor. But yes, you can use soy or you can use regular milk, whichever is your desire. We're going to put a couple of eggs in here, 2 eggs, and I'm just going to break them on in here because, see, I'm good enough where I'm not going to drop any shells in there. Now, if you can't do it without dropping shells, I suggest you do it in a separate container. So, got to put a little bit of vanilla. Now we're going to add a little bit of our savory stuff in there. The vanilla, cinnamon and nutmeg, of course. And, you know, if you are one of those people that like the flavor of the savory stuff, go ahead and add extra. One thing about recipes is they're always somebody's basic information about how to do something. Once you taste something the way somebody else made it, then you can make the choice as to whether you want to change it to your taste buds. It's the most important thing about cooking is that it's all about what you want, not what somebody else liked. So, because this is so narrow, I don't feel good about using that electric whisk because I didn't give myself a lot of room in that. So I am going to grab a spoon or another whisk that I can just whip this up with, and we're going to just stir this up a little bit as we add it into this, and then we're going to cut the pears up. So we're going to add this in there, and as we add this in, I'm steadily mixing it up. As you see on the bottom of the cup, you'll see the honey still on the bottom of the cup. So I'm trying to mix it in so it actually will pick up all the honey and bring it out of the cup and mix it into all this good fine stuff here. Now we're going to cut the pears up. So I have 3 pears here, but it really depends on how many pears you want. I don't worry about the size of the chunks. Like I said, they're going to cook down. So of course you just cut the inside out so that you don't have any seeds. And then you just cut your pear up. And yes, it's quite all right to use the skin as well. Of course, people will tell you that's where all the nutrients are, so you actually want to kind of keep the nutrients in there because we need all the nutrients we can get. This is a really great recipe. It's one of those that you can cut it up and change it so many ways. You can do carrot and raisins by itself. You can do apples. You can do just cinnamon and nutmeg. You can do walnuts and raisins. Wonderful gadgets nowadays, a little emulser, so you don't have to have a full-on blender going, but it's just as noisy, so here we go. And see, you have a nice little consistency. The pears, remember the carrots and the raisins, just to add some different flavor. We're going to pull the pans out of the oven that we're warming up the oil. We're going to add this into it, and we'll let it cook for about 45 minutes until a toothpick comes out clean, a knife comes out clean, whichever one you choose. Okay? We have hot pans. We're now pouring in the batter. We'll pour it until it's about halfway full. Kind of divide it up between the two loaf pans. Put these in the oven. Once again, we'll cook them for about 45 minutes. The good thing about the loaf pans is they are a little bit faster to cook than a great big pan. So you don't want to put it on your bottom rack because you don't want it burning on the bottom. You want to have it nice and well browned all over, so you want to put them on your top rack. Put it in there for about 45 minutes, check it and make sure that you're coming out with a clean toothpick, remembering that you have that fruit in there, so it might be a little juicy, but not too. And that's it for the pear bread. We'll get on to the kale chips, and we'll get into the spinach patties. So this time we're going to get started on some spinach patties. Like I said, the recipe that you have does not include the black beans. We're going to include black beans in some of this. I just used a can of black beans, rinsed it very well. We're going to put them in the food processor so they end up coming out pureed. So we're going to make a little bit of noise right now. While we're pureeing them, because we want them to be juicy, we don't want them dried out, I'm going to add just a little bit of oil to them, just enough to give them some juice. So we have some spinach. It is actually frozen spinach, already chopped up. I rinsed it off in cold water and then let it sit over the sink to drain, because that way it's nice and ready for us to do the spinach patties with. It is already thawed out because we want it thawed out so that it's ready to whip up and whip together. Now we're going to do the eggs. And this is the fun part. I do hope that you know how to separate eggs, because we're going to separate 2 eggs. I want the egg whites in here, and we're going to do that twice. I want 2 egg whites in here. The egg yolks we're not going to use this time. And then we're going to use 1 whole egg whites, egg yolk, and all. And because I'm so good, I can do that. Okay. Now, we want some flavor in these, of course. So we're going to add in, now I like I keep telling you guys, I use these Ethiopian spices. It gives a nice little kick to it, sometimes with or without a punch. We also want some crushed garlic in here. We want some breadcrumbs. And we're going to use some ground garlic. And then we're going to put a little bit of Burberry in here. This is, again, some of the Ethiopian spices. Not going to give it too much kick. We don't want it to burn our lips off or our insides out when it comes out. Going to add a little bit of Afrige just for some flavor. And, of course, we have to put some cumin. Now, the recipe that I gave you only calls for garlic and some minced garlic, some chopped onions. I personally like to play with my spices, so I always add a little bit more flavor. Besides, I know how it tastes already, so I know what I want in it. And here we are. Everything's in here in the bowl. This is just for the spinach patty part. So it's all mixed up in here. All I'm going to do is take it, mix it up with my hand, and then I'm going to form patties and put it in some hot oil on the stove and deep fry it. Just kind of pan fry it real quick. We're going to add some cheese. The cheese is a good holder, so to help hold and mold this together. So that's what we're doing right here, and that's why we're adding that in there. So we're just going to mix this up now. This is all of that wonderful stuff, the spices, the spinach, the cheese, the eggs, breadcrumbs. All of those are things that are going to hold it all together and make it nice and tasty. So we're just blending it up, give it in a nice little cursory spin in the bottle, so to speak. Now, before we add the beans in, remember we're going to do a combination of ones with the beans and without. We're going to take these and mold them into patties. Nice and simple, just nice little patties. We're going to put them in some grease that is on the stove already in my skillet. Might be best if you have one of those non-stick pans. That actually might be the best thing to cook these in. This has breadcrumbs and stuff on it. I didn't put a lot. I don't really care about the breadcrumb crust. We're going to put it in the hot oil. It's on a medium-low temperature so that it cooks. Now I put the other ones in with my hand, but I'm going to show you another way to do it so you never have to worry about getting popped with hot grease. You take it and put it on your spatula, and you just slide it right on off in the grease. And there you go. We'll let those cook for about 10 minutes on either side. So we're going to flip them over now. And as you see, they're nice and golden brown on top. They'll be fine in just a few minutes. While that's finishing up, let's go ahead and pull that bread out the oven. Check on it and see how ready it is. Doesn't that look delicious? Now, because it's the pear bread, now these are super moist. So what I'm doing is I'm actually taking the pan and lifting it a little bit to make sure it's going to come out good. Otherwise, you could have a mess on your hands. It'll still taste good. It just won't be pretty. I'm not well known for pretty food. I'm known for good food. So what I'm doing is making sure that this is going to come out the pan and hopefully all come out and not leave any in there. So here we go. 1, 2, yay, it came out. And then, of course, you want to flip it over so that it's nice and pretty and ready to go. We have our pear bread. And now we will get the kale chips ready. Kale chips are very simple. All we're going to do, these have been rinsed and they've been dried. So now they are just sitting here ready for us to break them up into bite-sized pieces. We're going to put them on some cookie sheets and put them in the oven, and they'll be ready to go. So now we're going to break up the kale into bite-sized pieces, and we're going to add it onto the cookie sheet so that we can take it and put it in the oven. And by putting it in the oven, we're going to sprinkle a little sea salt on it, a little bit of oil. If you're one of those that want to use olive oil, you can use any kind of oil you like. Olive oil, vegetable oil, regular oil. Take your pick. You want to kind of spread it out. Notice I have a thin layer here. And that should be good. We just want to cover the whole pan and make sure that we have plenty to snack on. Now we're going to sprinkle put some oil on it. And after you put just a little bit, you just kind of drizzle some oil over them. And once we drizzle oil on them, it's just going to help get it a little crispier. Not a whole lot. Did you notice this thin dribbles going down there? And then we'll sprinkle some sea salt is what I'm using today. I don't really use a lot of table salt. I use sea salt. Oh, that's going to be good on that spot. I use sea salt. I use kosher salt. There's a couple of places, if you want to know more about salt and some of the better ones or what you might want to use for what type of things you're doing, I do have this lady that does a great blog. It's called Salt 101, and she puts out some good information about salting your vegetables, how to salt your food. It gives you good information on how to use salt. We really use a whole lot of it right now, so the best way to do it is find out what works for you learn about salt and learn to use other things besides iodized salt. We're going to take these right now, put them in the oven. We're going to let it cook for about 10 or 15 minutes. I have the oven still set at 350 degrees. 10 or 15 minutes and this will be good to go. So the kale chips ought to be about ready. Notice they got a little flatter in there. They're not nearly as fluffy as they were before, but they should be nice and crispy. Look at that, nice and crispy. So we're just gonna pour them onto this, and you hear them nice and crispy. Now, of course, these are very healthy. So the meal that we have today, vegetarians will just love this, and this is actually something that we will eat also when we have our Daniel's fast in my church. So we have the spinach patties. These spinach patties, nice and really pretty green with the yellow in there. See all the little mixture of color, lightly fried, but you want to cook them on low so that the spinach has a time to cook. It stays together, nice patty, delicious, and looks really pretty as well. Then we have the black bean patties. Now these are a little darker because you have the black beans mixed in them, and of course that's the brown. We have the bean patty with the spinach, breadcrumbs, eggs, everything to hold it together, a little bit of cheese. Fry these up. These are a little moisture, have it a little bit denser than the spinach patties without the black beans. And then we have kale chips. Okay, so it's not your potato chip, but it's a whole lot healthier and just as tasty, nice and crispy. That's good. That is really good. Kale chips. All you have to do is add just a little bit of oil. Some sea salt is what I added. Bake them for 10 or 15 minutes. Ooh, make you want to holler. That's good stuff. Nice, healthy snack. So we have the pear bread. Delicious, nice and moist. With the pear bread we have right now, we have pears, raisins, carrots in it. We can have so much fun with. It's very versatile, using apples and cinnamon, carrots and raisins, walnuts and raisins. You can change it around, put whatever you want to do in that, and it's just absolutely delicious and moist. And if you feel like it, put a touch of butter on it when it's hot, melts in your mouth. So here we have the finished meal. We have the kale chips, and then we have the spinach patty. It's so moist and so delicious. Oh, and then the pear bread. You see those chunks of pears in there? You can see the raisins and the carrots. That's a good meal. A vegetarian select.